Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm doing a little bit of an update video on the Murray. As you guys know, basically I destroyed the engine and the transmission was having issues. I recently acquired both case halves for a MST Transaxle, which is really going to help me get this thing back together because upon inspection of my old Transaxle, the input shaft bearing was like super loose. It had a ton of play. And upon tearing it apart, why don't I actually just show you? So right here in front of you are two MST-205 or 206 top covers, whatever you want to call it, for the Transaxle. This is the one I just acquired. Shout out to Randy for hooking me up with this thing. I'm not going to say his last name, but he's the guy that runs the mud runs that you guys love so much. Really cool dude, tons of tractors, tons of parts. Here's the original case half to the Murray, and if you look down in there, you can see she's not a happy camper. It might be hard to see on video. I'll try to zoom in a little bit, but those chunks that are in there, that is all needle bearings, or they were needle bearings, I guess is the proper way to put that. They essentially disintegrated and scored the inner bearing race and basically destroyed, they scored my input shaft. So even if I put new bearings in this thing, they're not going to mesh nicely with this bearing race, and this thing's already been roughed up to a point where it's just going to destroy new bearings probably in like a summer. He also gave me the original input shaft with it. This one's very rusty looking, probably because more water gets in there than oil from the pulley sitting on the top. So what I'm going to do today is actually send a grease zerk through the center of this thing. Maybe every ride, every other ride, I can do a couple punts of grease into this thing and keep those bearings happy. And I can do that right between, I don't know if you can see down in there, there's two bearings, two sets of needle bearings. There's the bottom one right there, and you can see the top one right there. So if I come in somewhere in the middle, I can set a little grease fitting in there, and I will probably save myself a lot of future headaches. So it looks like right about there is where I'm going to want to drill my hole. Now I want it on the back side because it's much easier to access the back of the Transaxle because of my skid plates and side plates and stuff like that. And also just want to note, I should definitely be removing these bearings before doing this. However, I think it's probably going to damage the bearings more to drive them out the bottom and then drive them back in than it would be for me to just drill the hole and then clean it out with some brake or carb cleaner, make sure everything's doesn't have any shavings in it or anything like that. Just make sure you drill straight and don't put too much pressure, because once you feel it start to break through, you don't want to send it through to the other side. So what you want to do now is look down in where you drilled, and most likely where your drill bit broke through the other side, there's going to be some flakes of metal. Just scrape those off. I can see I got one right there, little piece of aluminum. If you leave that in there, it's going to destroy these bearings like immediately. So get that out of there. What I'm going to do now is actually use my, I think it's a 1/4x20 tap. I'm going to tap a hole, or tap threads into this new hole, and we're going to put our grease fitting in, and then I'm going to take this thing outside. I'm going to hose it down with brake cleaner. I'm going to take a little bit of this is just 5W30 mixed with a different product called Motor Coat, which is a really good lubricant. I don't know if I'd use it in my engine, but it definitely helps reduce squeaks and hinges and stuff like that. But make sure you hold your tap firm until it starts to set. And there we go. You can see when you start to feel like it really easy, that's how you know you've cut good threads. I wish it was straighter than that, honestly. It's kind of a shit job. But at this point, I really don't care. Just want to have a fitting in there. So I got it cleaned out really good. I literally used just now like a half a can of brake clean to clean out those needle bearings. So they're really dry. They don't work really well now, but once I get some oil in there, they'll definitely free up a little bit. Don't over tighten these either, because you're threading into aluminum, which is not a very strong metal, as we all know. As you can see, I got the input drive gear back in there, and I'm working on getting the shift mast installed. We're going to go ahead and move on with the cleaning of the bottom half and all the gears, and then reassemble this sucker. So I'm getting ready to start swapping parts over, and I'm just taking a look at my locker that I made in a video from a long time ago. Still working on the original one from the original transmission. Looks like it's in great shape. I have no reason to really mess with it, so we're just going to throw it right back in and just run it. So we got it pretty much assembled. Checked all the bushings, they're all clocked properly. The rest of the bronze ones, they just seat in and they're good. The shift fork's hooked up. I need to put the detent ball and spring in, but I'll do that at the end. I just need to take this bottom cover out. Got to clean that out, and then I got to scrape off the gasket material, and we'll be good to put this thing back together. Alright, so we got the top or the bottom cover, technically, all cleaned up, squeaky clean inside. I laid some bead sealer all around it, so we should be ready to throw this sucker back together. Obviously, I'm putting it together upside down. I forget who told me this, but long ago somebody had mentioned it's a lot easier to put your shift fork into your shift key collar and all that and have the whole thing assembled rather than try to Mickey Mouse it back together. So that's how I've basically done it for the past several times I've taken transaxles apart, is, putting them back together, I guess I should say, upside down. So now what I'm going to do is take 2 of the assembly bolts. They're still coated with anti-seize the last time I used them. I'm going to run those 2 through the center bolt holes. So it'll keep this whole thing together. Then I can flip it and put all the rest of the bolts in. Now initially upon putting this thing back together, I'm only going to use this little nut driver because I don't want to over torque anything yet. Especially considering as that sealant kind of sets up a little bit, you don't want to torque everything down maximum pressure yet. What you want to do is kind of get everything hand tight, make sure everything's good and lined up, and then let it set for a few hours so let that stuff get really rubbery, then bolt it together, and that makes a really, really good seal. Ever since I've started doing that, I've never had leaking problems with anything that I ever assemble with liquid gasket maker. Alright, so I've got the detent ball back in, still haven't put oil in it yet, still haven't bolted the whole case all together, but now that I know it's all seated properly, I just want to make sure that it's, number one, that the shifter functions, which it seems like it does. I think that's reverse, so we'll give this a spin. Looks like reverse works. Let's go. Neutral. Really shouldn't be doing this without oil in the sump, but we're just giving it a good test real quick, just so I know if anything's binding up. It all looks good, so we're going to run with it. I'm going to finish bolting this thing back together. We're going to get it reinstalled in the Murray. So here we are now on day 3 of the reassembly process of this transaxle. As you can see, I spent a little bit of time. Now that it's cured, I let it go overnight. I torqued down all the case bolts. Don't forget the ones on the bottom. I got my pulley back on. I made sure it was aligned perfectly with the spacers I had on it before, so belt alignment should be perfect. I also do realize that this is a fractional horsepower cast aluminum pulley, which you're actually not really supposed to use in our applications. And I can't remember when I bought this thing. It was a long time ago, and I fully intended on replacing it with steel. Didn't, obviously, but as you can see, there's really no wear on this thing, and I think that's because of my superb belt alignment skills. So there's been no side loading or no wear, uneven wear on the aluminum pulley. So I'm gonna leave it for now, but it's a good reminder that I probably should get a steel pulley. I also went ahead and refilled the case, the sump, with 75W90's fully synthetic Valvoline gear oil. You can use whatever you want. I like synthetic just because it works better in cold temperatures. But I will give you a little tip when you're putting this plug back in, the rubber plug. That rubber plug right there, you can see it's got the hole in the center. Easiest way to get that back in is to put a little bit of gear oil on the rubber plug, put a Phillips head screwdriver inside this hole, and then force the plug in from the bottom. You don't want to try to mush it in because it'll just mushroom and it'll never go in. But other than that, brakes are back on. Shift linkage is set up. I think it's clocked in the right position. Not really sure yet. We'll find out soon. The only thing left to do is put it back under the Murray. And here is the current state of the Murray. You can see it's basically become a collect-all of basically its own entrails in the form of engine parts. Oh, down here you can just see a large cavity where the transmission's supposed to be, and my brake assembly that's got to get hooked back up. So we're going to get that thing slid under here, jack it up into place, and finally get this thing sitting back on 4 wheels. There you go, guys. Murray is now officially back on four wheels, which I am super excited about. I haven't had it like this for probably a year now. So we got the MST back in there. It was a good transmission, just lost the input bearing. Hopefully the grease fitting will help alleviate some of that stress going forward. Maybe not. Huge shout out to my buddy Randy, the guy who runs the mud runs. He's the guy that hooked me up with the top cover. So thanks again, buddy. You literally saved this tractor. As I mentioned before, the other big piece of this puzzle is a motor. I'm gonna build a new motor. I'm gonna build it. So what I got actually is Mower Outlaw right here. He donated me this motor. This was from one of his engines, or from one of his machines. It's a 15 horse OHV. It's just got a little oil leak out of the bottom seal, down in the oil seal on the crankshaft. So I'm gonna pull that sucker apart. I'm gonna remove the governor the right way. We're gonna swap in my carburetor and use that. I'm gonna port the head a little bit, the intake ports, the exhaust ports, just to make it breathe a little easier. But other than that, we're gonna leave it generally stock, because it seemed to work fine in stock form as long as you don't drive it through a mud puddle. So that's gonna do it for me. My camera is now dying. It's saying charge battery pack, so hopefully it saves this video, but be on the lookout for the next video of me tearing that engine apart, putting it back together again, and hopefully getting the Murray up and running. Thanks for watching, you guys. See you later.